Okay, enough. This is an outright lie, and I'm not in the habit of calling people liars.
Got some interesting news here today. Welcome back to Moose on the Loose. My name's David. Today's top stories. We've got Melanie Joly. She's asked on the CBC if she wants Trudeau's job. She doesn't deny it. We've also got Guilbeault getting completely humiliated, called a money launderer in Parliament. It's awesome. Got a couple other stories as well. Let's jump into this. Got here is Melanie Joly on CBC. And most of this interview, they're talking about icebreakers, Northern Canada and protecting it against Russia and setting up treaties with Finland and all that kind of thing. But David Cochrane actually asked Melanie Joly about the interview that she did with the New York Times about her wanting to become prime minister. This is interesting because she hasn't come out and said this. She hasn't announced that she wants Trudeau's job. But essentially, if you wanted to do this and not rock the boat, you would get a newspaper or a media company like the New York Times to announce this for you. I think that's exactly what she did here. Because look, when he asked her, she just smiles. She doesn't deny it.
Okay, I have to ask you about one other thing. And this was the article that appeared this week in the New York Times, which suggests that you are not only the foreign affairs minister to this current prime minister, but could be someone who's eager to replace this prime minister when that opportunity is available. Pierre Poilievre has used this to criticize Justin Trudeau, saying he is so weak. His foreign affairs minister launches her leadership campaign to replace him in the New York Times. What's your reaction to that criticism and the suspicion people have, say this article is raised?
Well, I think, my message is clear. Of course, the Prime Minister can count on my support. He can count on my support since 2012 when I was there for his leadership campaign. And when I gave my interview back in July, I was asked that question and I gave the same answer that I'm giving you today. As for Poilievre, I think that
you didn't say no. There was no immediate reaction. No, I'm not trying to take his job. She wants his job.
Fundamentally, what Canadians expect us to do is to deliver for them. And we're coming up with a tax break that is very popular and very worth it for all Canadians.
Worth it? As I shared on my previous video, it's anywhere between three different reports out. $3 people would get back, $39 or $119, which the CBC themselves did that math if you're buying a PlayStation and eating out for 2 months. How worth it is it really to Canadians if this is going to further increase inflation and it's going to be detrimental to many of the businesses out there who have to reprogram their machines? You guys didn't think this through.
And Poilievre should be supporting us in this tax cut.
So when you did this interview in July, was it, because there was a photo component to it, was this a profile about possible future leader ambitions? What was the intention of this article? Because you're a very savvy political operator. You would have known how this would have been perceived, right?
We were approached by the New York Times. And so we did the interview, period.
What? What kind of answer is that? This media company told us to do an interview about why I want to be prime minister. So sure, why not? She saw this as a way to try to move her career forward. And when she mentioned earlier about she was there since 2012, since Justin Trudeau came and said, I want you to be a minister, blah, blah, blah. She's basically saying, I've done my dues. I've supported him the whole time. She's not denying this. This is very obvious. She wants the job. There's no way we're going to elect you, though. There's not a snowball's chance in hell Canadians will ever elect you to be prime minister of this country. You're too much of a doofus.
And at the time, I did also an interview at Châtelaine. How come you're not asking me questions about the interview, the profile in Châtelaine?
Oh, I have not seen that profile in Châtelaine, but I saw this in the New York Times. But, July, when you did this, was right in the weeks after you lost the Toronto St. Paul's by-election, when people in your caucus were demanding a meeting, and there was a lot of pressure on the Prime Minister and a lot of questions about his political viability. I mean, did that enter into because the assessment of how this would be portrayed? Well,
it is portrayed as a profile, and at the same time, the Prime Minister has no doubt can count on my trust in him and my work for him. And to be frank, David, my job is to be on the international scene, to defend Canada's interests, to make sure ultimately that we exert influence in a world where it is more difficult for middle-sized powers.
She didn't deny any of that stuff. She doubled down on just supporting Trudeau, that she's got his back, but she had a smirk that entire time. Just come out and say it. You want Trudeau's job.
The tougher world, we're working on having a much more tougher response, and that's what I'm doing every day. And I'm talking to international media also when I'm in different countries. That's my job.
So talking to international media about being the foreign affairs minister then is the reason why you talked to the New York Times about wanting to take the prime minister's job? You notice how she pumped herself up there. She's like, oh, I'm doing all this hard stuff with the global stuff around the world, blah, blah, blah. She's trying to seem prime ministerial. She's trying to seem like she's a leader, when really anyone could look up any clip of her ever talking and she's an absolute buffoon.
First Minister Melanie Joly, I've gone over time. Thank you for coming in today.
Thank you. Pleasure.
I'm actually shocked that David Cochrane asked her those questions. I'd like to look at the comments, but they're once again shut off on CBC. But moving on, next up we have this one. Last year, Canada accepted 471,550 immigrants, 900,000 foreign students, 766,000 temporary foreign workers, and housing starts 223,000. This is the problem here. The fact that this number is not bigger than this number, and these numbers, it's not bigger than any of these numbers. You got this one, it says it's time to start paying attention when only retail items selling well in Canada are luggage, gold, and OnlyFans subscriptions. So you can see that here, jewelry, watches, luggage, briefcases. Maybe that's because so many people are moving out of Canada. Audio and video recordings and game software. Some of the things are kind of flat, a lot of stuff negative, especially this one, automotive and household fuels.
The NDP Liberal Carbon Tax Coalition is delivering Canadians a Christmas nightmare. Canada's Food Price Index report showed that, on average, Canadians will spend $800 more on groceries this year. The Prime Minister's carbon tax is making a dire situation even worse. The number of food bank visits in Toronto are up 1 million people to 3.5 million visits, a 43% increase in new food bank users. Scurvy is on the rise. Food insecurity has surged more than 20%. All Canadians want for Christmas is a carbon tax election. When will this Prime Minister make that Christmas wish come true?
Get serious, Mr. Speaker. The very report that the member opposite...
He's getting laughed out of the room.
Order. Let's get serious, Mr. Speaker. The very report that the members opposite cite says that climate change is the greatest driver of food price inflation. It's the same thing Sylvain Charlebois said when he came to committee recently, and the Conservatives have no plan to fight climate change. In addition, we stepped up over the holidays to offer Canadians a GST tax cut. What did the Conservatives do? They opposed. When we step up to help children across Canada get food at school, what do the Conservatives do? They oppose. You want to make Canadians give Canadians a Merry Christmas? Step up.
What a mess that guy is.
Well, I guess it would take a Festivus miracle to have a serious Prime Minister who understands that when you increase taxes on farmers who grows the food, truckers who move the food, you increase costs of the food. But after 9 years of this NDP Liberal government, this is the Christmas list Canadians face. Grocery prices up $800. Price of food inflation is up 36% higher in Canada than the United States. A quarter of Canadians are skipping meals. When will this Prime Minister grant a common sense Christmas gift to Canadians and call a carbon tax election?
Mr. Speaker, I would like to quote Mac Levesque, Chief of Security at TD Bank, and he says, I quote, "Okay, enough. This is an outright lie, and I'm not in the habit of calling people liars. The report he's referring to does not mention that the carbon tax is a factor behind the $800 increase, and certainly does not say that carbon tax will cost families $800 more on food." That's coming from the Chief Security Officer at TD Bank, Mr. Speaker.
Yeah, because we can believe anything from bankers. Come on.
Money launderer, thanks.
Order.
He said money launderer, thanks. Wow.
Back, Mr. Speaker.
So just playing it back one more time, listen to this.
Money launderer, thanks.
Order.
They're referring to Guilbeault with his whole Cycle Capital $225 million thing. I'm pretty sure that's what they're talking about with that. We don't need any tips from Stephen Guilbeault unless it's on how to operate the laundry machines. He's very good at that. Next up, we got a pretty sad story here of looting in someone's garage. The garage door just somehow opened while they left and people cleaned it out.
Someone riding this blue electric scooter spots an opportunity, walking into this open garage and leaving with some tools. 80 minutes later, it appears he returns, this time in a different hoodie.
He's got the exact same shoes, exact same pants. He's wearing his pants pretty low. You can see his blue underwear sticking out.
The Terrells had left their Surrey home last Saturday to visit family in the Okanagan. The garage mysteriously opened on its own, and other looters raided their garage throughout the night.
The bike was on here, and I had a cable lock wrapped around the bar and then around the frame of the bike as well.
His most
Let's just look at this. So this is the same guy. So he told his friend, and his friend came.
Bike was on here.
He said other looters, but that's the same guy. This guy needs to be in jail for 10 years for doing that. Same with this guy. This shouldn't be hard to find these guys. Just look for the guy with the blue scooter and this hoodie. Put him in jail.
His most prized possession, this $14,000 Yeti mountain bike. The bike bandits came prepared.
To lose all of my bikes in one go, that now I can't even go do the sport that I do to stay physically and mentally healthy, is just devastating.
How can a bike cost $14,000? I know there's expensive bikes, but that's crazy. This is just sad, man. So maybe these are the other looters they were talking about earlier, even though they showed footage of the guy with his buddy.
Have like a pretty good security setup. We've got cameras, we've got automatic locks, we can remotely close our garage door, and now we're considering, like, are we doing enough?
Surrey Police Service warns the Grinch is out, reminding the public when they're on vacation or expecting packages to be extra vigilant.
More incidents take place from homes that are vacated while people are shopping. More thefts take place from doorsteps because it's easier.
Police say technology can help capture criminals, but sometimes the neighborly thing can prevent crime. And that's something the Terrells are doing too.
We saw a neighbor with their garage open, and we immediately went and knocked on their door. We don't want that to happen to them either.
We need punishment in our country. What if this happened in North Korea? This guy would be executed. I said this a few days ago. Maybe it doesn't have to be that extreme, but maybe we should have some punishment, like 10 years in jail if you're caught stealing something out of someone's garage. Seems a little harsh, but people wouldn't do it anymore. I bet you if I spent my days hour after hour, I could figure out who this guy is. All you have to do is look through the Surrey cameras, go find that scooter that he rolled in on, find this blue scooter, find a guy who looks like he's 230 pounds with this hoodie, check security cameras, you'll find the guy. The last thing to note is anyone who's driving around on a scooter isn't going to be going that far. It limits the radius. All you have to do is, if I were those homeowners, I would be going out for nightly walks and see if you can see that scooter. Essentially what this guy's done is he's ruined the use of his scooter here. Because if anyone has a scooter that looks like this in this area of Surrey now, most definitely it's going to be this guy. On this episode of Far Off Ripoff, Justin Trudeau spent $20 million of our hard-earned tax dollars on this project seeks to support agricultural small and medium enterprises to address the increased technical complexity, eligibility requirements for reporting obligations related to... This is the biggest word salad thing I've ever read in my life, but it says right here, increased productivity, growth of gender-oriented and climate-resilient agri-SEMs in Africa, increased gender equality along agri-food value chain. I don't know what gender-oriented food growing is. It seems like a whole lot of nonsense to me. I will continue to expose this corrupt spending.
They say weak men create hard times, and this weak Prime Minister's inflationary deficits gave Canadians the worst standard of living in over 40 years. The Finance Minister promised one of her fiscal guardrails would not be going over her deficit, which is $40 billion. In fact, the PBO said she blew right past it. Simple question, what's the deficit?
Mr. Speaker, what my honourable colleague fails to point out is that Canada is projected to have the fastest growing economy in the G7 next year. He fails to point out that we are creating jobs at a near record pace. He doesn't understand that wages are increasing faster than inflation. His strategy for the economy is to make cuts to the programs that are supporting people, cuts to the programs that are building houses. He's opposing, ironically, the tax cut that would deliver relief to families over the holidays. We're going to focus on growing the economy in a way that works for everyone, not the Conservative approach to cut the support that families need.
Yeah, that didn't answer the question. What's the deficit?
Could have just said he doesn't know, like he doesn't know where the million people he lost went. And even this number-challenged Prime Minister admits every new dollar of his handouts make his inflationary deficits worse. He says he's going to leave the economy to the bankers, that he doesn't think about monetary policy, and he said budgets balance themselves. It's the same incompetence that made Canadians bank broke, building broke, and belly broke. Canadians want to know how broken the Liberal deficit is. What's the number?
Way to go, Jack! My honourable colleague seems to have a penchant for alliteration and personal insults, but what he lacks is an ability to advance policies that will grow the economy or actually help people in need. Mr. Speaker, at every opportunity, they oppose the investments that are creating jobs in this country. They oppose the investments that are building homes in this country, and they oppose the measures that are going to provide tax cuts to middle-class families, to low-income families, to workers in this country. For once, I wish we could have a debate about the issues instead of stooping to these lows where they throw insults instead of advancing policies that help real people.
How is asking what the deficit is an insult? Answer the question.
Here's a common sense policy that common sense conservatives will bring in when his constituents fire him after the next election. We're going to axe the tax for good for everyone. And these deficits that this prime minister keeps making sent over 2 million Canadians into a food bank in a single month, made 1 in 4 Canadians skip meals, and sent 1 in 5 kids into poverty. But the finance minister said all of them are just feeling a vibe session. Look, if she's not going to release her economic statement, will she at least tell Canadians how bad she's going to blow through her deficit?
Yeah, way to go, Jeff.
Since we've come into government, Mr. Speaker, we've lifted hundreds of thousands of kids out of poverty through measures like the Canada Child Benefit.
A new report says a family of 4 can expect to pay $800 more in food in 2025.
Mr. Speaker, I should plan as well the idea that we've got an important stakeholder in Ottawa advocating for a national school food program this week. Her name is Molly. She is an 8-year-old in grade 3 at A.G. Bailey in Nova Scotia, and we're going to provide not only a tax cut on food, but a national school food program so she and her classmates will be able to...
Because her parents can't afford food. Congratulations, Molly. This is disgraceful, man.
...enjoy a healthy meal every day of the year.
What is... Is he talking about his kid? What is this cringe? Jumping over to my group, let's check out some memes. When you pay for your groceries on December 14th, and remember 80% of your grocery bill is already GST exempt, and you save 34 cents on the rest. So I've seen multiple reports. The one I shared with you guys a few days ago with coming from Don Plett was $39 that you'd save. I also saw another report from CBC where they added in, like, if you bought PlayStation and if you ate out and all those things, it would be like $119 the average Canadian would save over the 2-month tax break. And then I also saw another report today saying you'll save $3.15. So I think it's safe to say maybe $50 is the average that Canadians will save. There we go. We got a moose on the loose. Breaking news, CBC has tested negative for journalism integrity. The public is advised to news distance themselves until competent journalists... There we have it, Stephen Guilbeault getting humiliated in Parliament. You always love to see it. Melanie Joly, she wants that job. It's quite obvious. The question is now, how many other Liberals are going to be stepping up to the plate to take Trudeau's job? They can see this wounded, defeated, pathetic little Justin Trudeau. He's got nothing left, barely any supporters left. The Liberals are not going to wait too long to try to fight to take over that seat. The question is now, as more of these Liberals come forward, it'll indicate to us as the audience, as viewers, as Canadians, how close the election really is. Because the closer they get to this, the more Liberals speak up wanting Trudeau's job, the more likely we're closer to election, as they don't care about rocking the boat as much. Because you think about it right now, they still have about, 11 months? If you think about it financially, most of these ministers are making $25,000 a month. I know, that's insane. If they rock the boat now, they don't know what the reaction will be from Trudeau. Maybe they get demoted to MP and they lose $100,000 a year. Who knows? It's $25,000 a month. If they get demoted, that brings them down to just over $16,000 a month. So it's quite a bit. So they might wait further until October if they know Justin Trudeau has said behind closed doors, it doesn't matter what, we're pushing forward to October. If they know the election's going to come right after Jagmeet gets his pension in February 25th, then maybe they start sticking their neck out come January, February. Even right now, we're seeing it with Melanie Joly. That's where this just kind of raises questions. Really, time will tell here as we get into the new year, but expect more of these slippery Liberals to be sticking their necks out, because when it comes down to it, they're all greedy rats.